if it was easy, everybody would do this. And I think, the excitement is on the other side. And we've seen thousands of guests come in and eat at a James Beard worthy restaurant and have their weddings and, have 4th of July celebrations, watching outdoor movies. Like the experiences that we've watched people have at that property and the feedback that we've gotten about how much they love it has been incredibly rewarding for sure.
What I do is inconsequential. Why I do what I do is I get to shorten people's journeys every day. What I love about our hospitality industry is that it's our mission to make people feel cared for while on their journeys. Together, we'll explore what hospitality means in the built environment, in business, and in our daily lives. I'm Dan Ryan, and this is Defining Hospitality. This podcast is sponsored by Berman Falk Hospitality Group, a design-driven furniture manufacturer who specializes in custom case goods and seating for hotel guest rooms. Today's guest is one of our very few boomerang guests. It's his second appearance, and we're really excited to have him on, so please enjoy. He is a hospitality professional who's also educated in law. He previously worked as a law clerk for the Philadelphia Eagles. He's the co-founder and CEO of Mountain Shore Properties. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen Wendell. Welcome, Stephen.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. Good to be back. Good to see you.
Well, I'm so glad to have you back, and also mostly because I love excitement. And I know when we spoke a couple years ago, and we've been in touch since then, but you are co-founder and CEO of Mountain Shore Properties. The bulk of that portfolio has always been select service properties, cash generating assets. And then you went out and did Camptown, a project in Louisville that's more in the luxury and lifestyle space, independent, quasi-independent. And now I feel like you've changed. It's giving you this incredible bug, which I think you knew going into doing those. But now there's this overall excitement about this luxury and lifestyle play in your portfolio, not just because they could be seen as others as like really cool, bespoke, experiential properties, but also I think from a business case, they're contributing a lot more earnings to the bottom line, not just for hotel owners in general, but also for the big brands that have kind of figured out this way to bifurcate the luxury and lifestyle segment from the select service. And it's actively happening right now, a lot of reorganization. But for the number of properties that are out there in the luxury and lifestyle space, they're outsized contributors of earnings to the big brands. And I'm assuming also by virtue of that, to the ownership groups that have them. So tell us about this transformation and tell us why you're excited.
Yeah, no, thank you. I think that's right. I think they're moving in this direction. And, it wasn't 15 years ago where they were hesitant to move in this direction. And, they had their tried and true select serve brands that the owners were popping up, that were making great margins, that were paying them fees, that REITs were gobbling up after they were developed. And then I think there was this move from the guest, really first, right? This hospitality world is all about the guest, to say, I want something a little bit more than this. And as independent brands started popping up and guests were gravitating towards them, and even Airbnb in its early days was creating something that was something different and unique. I think that the big brands took notice and said, okay, we need to do something. And so that something was starting their own, but also gobbling up and buying, and every one of the major brands, you talk about Hyatt buying Dream and then buying Standard and Bunkhouse. You've got Hilton buying Graduate Hotels and buying Nomad, and then you've got Marriott doing the same, and even Accor. So like all these major brands have made their move into lifestyle space, and they know that growth is there. From an ownership side, all I'll say is it's a lot harder, but I guess if things are harder, then there's some carrot at the end, and that is more profitability. And I think it's not only more profitability when you get it right, it's more profitability for longer, right? We're all doing these developments. They're extremely difficult. They're extremely expensive. You're putting long-term debt on this. you're trying to build assets that really have longevity. And like, you know, a Courtyard can be a nice thing. It can be a great, a Marriott Courtyard is what I'm saying, deal, but there's no chance that it's lasting longer than 30 years, probably 20, 25 years. If you build Hotel Genevieve in Louisville, or if you build XYZ boutique brand, hopefully it's around in 60 years. And I think in this world, there's something to be said about that, especially with the upfront cost of capital being so much. And the last thing I'll say is, on the lifestyle side of things, you really have no rate cap. And with the increasing cost of construction, with the increasing cost of labor, margins are shrinking. The only way you're going to kind of, get there, so to speak, is to have ADR growth. And these, kind of soft brands allow you, when you get it right, to really increase ADR.
Something surprised me before we started recording, where you were, I don't have the words or vocabulary for it, but I think it was that we've reached this kind of inflection point where those select service kind of tilt up, simple new construction type buildings were always like a better deal from a constructability perspective. But because rates and everything have gone crazy on the construction, interest rates, et cetera, even if you're doing a new build or a reposition, although I guess on the lifestyle side, maybe you'd be doing more of a reposition. So like the structure's already built, you're taking advantage of that replacement cost arbitrage. But it seems that there's been this inflection that now also these independent and lifestyle hotels are easy. Nothing's easy, but like from a cost perspective, it's almost like kind of an even trade to build out a luxury and lifestyle.
Yeah, and like I think it's most important is just that, before you get to the finish, it's still concrete and the foundations are the same and all of that stuff is the same. And so it used to be that to do a Courtyard by Marriott or a Hampton Inn, I mean, just take an example. Like, let's give you concrete examples, because we know this to be true, right? We built a Hampton Inn in Tallahassee, Florida in 2018 for $21 million. And we sold it, for over $30 million. And maybe today it's worth 35. Again, we don't own it. I'm just giving you kind of round bottom. But to build that same property today, that same property that we built for $21 million in 2018 is going to be well north of $30 million.
Wow.
And so you wouldn't do it. Now, that's a profitable deal for us. It's probably been profitable for the people that bought it for us, in the sense that they've been making money. But you wouldn't take all that risk that goes in with it to ramp it and start it today. And so what's happening is that the replacement cost of select serve is getting so great. Now, you can go on the side of the road and build a 3-story stick building and probably still be okay. But like, again, how long is that building going to last? How big is your PIP going to be in 7 years to replace the soft goods? It's all. And so when you go and look and say, okay, especially for a group like us, it's like maybe going to do one property a year or one property every 2 years. We're building in urban centers. We are focused on, long term. And so when you look at that, yes, it's more expensive to do your FF&E. You got to pay more in soft costs to do a boutique brand, but a lot of those costs are kind of the same as you would to do this select brand. And oh, by the way, now when you're done, your rate ceiling is not there, and all of those things. And so to our standpoint, it's like we're just going to go a little bit of the extra mile to do a nicer product, and we think that's going to resonate with guests for longer. And by the way, also when you build that thing, the housekeeper to clean the courtyard it's the same, right? It's the same act. But now if you've got a more sustainable revenue generating hotel, you have more money to pay that person, which is where we are in the entire life cycle. And so, that's our bet. Again, it's much harder to get it right because everyone knows what they're getting with the Hampton Inn. That's why it works. They don't know what they're going to get with your new brand, and you have to earn their trust and you have to earn their business over time. So you need to be prepared for the ramp to take longer, but that once you get through the ramp, you're at a higher plateau than you would be if you were in select service.
Yeah. And I love when I talk to guests, and if I'm doing my job right, when they light up and I'm like, oh, tell me more about that. It gets really exciting. If we go back in time to our first conversation on this podcast, I remember at Camptown up in the Catskills, you were talking about, I think, the fire pit outside and how you could create this really incredible experience
Yeah.
that could be different. So you've built this thing that you probably wouldn't get at a Hampton Inn, right? I don't think they have fire pits. But the same way you lit up about that, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and the Genevieve in Louisville, I don't think any of your select service properties, I don't know if there's a select service property anywhere that you can get a Michelin-starred restaurant within it. So like from a sense of purpose and passion, I feel like this lifestyle and independent, like the select service portfolio kind of gave you the airlift to try do all these other things. And now this light bulb has gone off that I don't think you really fully considered until you've opened up these two, and then you have more coming. So tell us about that transformation.
Yeah, no, 100%. I was like, I thought I knew a lot about hotels when we started doing these hotels, the two lifestyle that you bring out, Camptown and Hotel Genevieve. And now I'm like, oh, okay, I knew nothing about hotels. Now I know something about hotels. And so from running a restaurant in a hotel, running an event space at Camptown, having, outdoor pool, having, all of this amenities and having different types of groups coming, rooftop bar in Louisville. So there's just all these elements that happen at a lifestyle hotel that make it wonderful, make it amazing, make it why people want to be there. And so now I think what we're doing is taking the learnings from those, like where have we made mistakes? Where did, like, Louisville's a great example. We built too many kind of F&B outlets in one space. So on the next iteration, I don't think we need to do that. I think we need to be more focused with one or two outlets instead of three or four. And those are the type of things that we have learned that we will not create the same mistakes and we'll apply them moving forward. But I'm just as excited, I think, if not more so, about what we're doing, because I feel like I have a real roadmap of what to do and how to do it. We're renovating a old school in the town of Fayetteville, West Virginia, where I was originally born, into a 40-room boutique hotel with a restaurant named after my grandmother, Patsy. Her name was Pat, but her friends called her Patsy. And so, just all that happened at Camptown, and to get that project open, the 2 years that we've been open, and learning how to ramp, learning how to market an independent hotel correctly, we know what we're setting ourselves up for. And I think now, any good entrepreneur or business person learns from the deals they've done, from the mistakes they've made, and makes it better moving forward. And I think that's where we are. And so, it's easy though. I can see how some people may have quit in the messy middle. Gary Vaynerchuk likes to talk about the messy middle. And if you're in the messy middle, a lot of people quit and they don't get to see the other side. And so I think we're through a lot of that, and there's going to be a lot of hard decisions and moments because that's the industry we're in. But I think we have some real great projects that we're coming out of the ground out with right now.
That's also that messy middle. I love that. I didn't know. I never heard that before as related to Gary Vaynerchuk. But I think that's why great entrepreneurs are in a way almost masochistic, right? Because they're like, I'm going to get there. I don't know how. We're going to pivot the path the whole way there, but it's going to happen. And yeah, it's a crucible, to be sure.
It is. And if you've listened to so many different entrepreneurs, of all these different industries, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, the titans, and almost all of them had some near death moment of their business, if not multiple. And we aren't even we didn't have a near death. We've had some whew, man, this is rough. This is a close call, or so we're not even. And so I look at that and it's man, you hear them say it and it's almost like a funny tale now because they're all so successful, but they were in it at that moment. And many of them could have just said, I'm done. This doesn't worth it. And so I think I tell myself that a lot when we're having issues and something's hard. And it's well, if it was easy, everybody would do this. And I think, the excitement is on the other side. And again, watching, just Camptown, we were talking before, the last conversation was before it was built. And now we've seen thousands of guests come in and eat at a James Beard worthy restaurant and have their weddings and, have 4th of July celebrations, watching outdoor movies. Like, the experiences that we've watched people have at that property and the feedback that we've gotten about how much they love it has been incredibly rewarding, for sure, for a project that was really hard.
So going in that, the messy middle, and then also looking forward to Fayetteville. Um, you're a former collegiate baseball player, and this is one thing I believe that all entrepreneurs need to keep in mind, and it's a baseball thing, because in baseball, you can get into the Hall of Fame if you hit 30% of the balls that come at you, right? If you hit more than 30, and that goes into, I'm a partner in a company called Berman Falk up in Canada, and we do custom furniture. And as Canadians, they have the hockey term. It's like, you're not gonna make the shots you don't take, right?
Yeah.
And in that messy middle, and I think the platform on the independent side is it's a platform for experimentation, and if done correctly, you can experiment. You can get your hands slapped, but then you're going to find your way. And then it's like that field of dreams thing, to bring in another baseball thing. If you build it and you have that passion, it carries through, and they will come.
Yeah, it's 100%. And I think Camptown, for the first year, we could have looked at the results and said, like, not everybody, like, our occupancy isn't exactly where we thought, and like, it's being difficult to get the word out. And now, the word is out, and like, success begets success, obviously. And as more people experience these places and they tell their friends about it, you just more and more people come. And so I think, again, I was referencing this before, but like, the ramp, we always talk about ramp in the hotel business. Like, what's your ramp? And you can open a Hampton Inn and be full 6 months, after opening, because that system has so much goodwill built into it, and there's so many people that stay there. But my concern, really, as we build into this world of so many different flags, and I don't even think the brands will tell you that they have too few flags today, but what they're doing is preparing for some of those flags to die. And they will then have, whether it's a soft brand that takes its place, maybe Courtyard in 10 years is no longer relevant, but AC by Marriott is. And that brand, Marriott's okay in that situation. They've got enough flags to fill the hole or the void. And so, but I want, that doesn't help the owner of those hotels that the brands are kind of falling down. So we've been really thoughtful about what we're doing. And I will say that, to the brand's credit, they're being more, giving more leeway to creativity, because I think they know that they have to attract the owners. And I think they know, at the end of the day, when it comes to lifestyle, that's the right thing to do, because it's going to resonate with guests, which means it's going to be more revenue, which means it's more money for them and their shareholders.
Yeah. And I want to get into that bit in a second, but I used to be on the advisory board, and I'm a huge fan of the Independent Lodging Congress. And I think it was in like 2017 or 18, they had a side panel discussion with lenders, right? So I think it was like Deutsche Bank and maybe Bank of America and someone else who specialized in hospitality lending. And they were saying, and it kind of shocked the audience, this is before the pandemic, that, to get debt on a property that's not really associated with the flag was always hard to do in the past. Now you don't need that checkbox isn't as weighty as it used to be. I think with COVID, it may have changed things again, and it's still really difficult. But I feel like with these independent properties that you're doing, do you have a flag associated with them right away, or is it harder to raise the debt side, or are you tapping into all your LPs on the equity side? So that's the first two questions there. And then the third question on that is, if you go forward in 10 years, 20 years, who knows, do you have an ideal mix of select serve versus like kind of luxury lifestyle, or like, is it a 50-50? Do you want to trend more towards that way? But I'd love to hear your thinking there.
Yeah, no, great questions. So I think the equity side is one piece that, our investors luckily trust us to do right. And I think so far so good. But the debt side, 100%, it's still easier. I can just tell you, the Madison deal, which is a Tribute by Marriott affiliation, we had 4 term sheets, very, very competitive, the debt process. So I have found that it's still easier to get at if the major brand is involved. What's also happening is the major brands are becoming easier for them to be involved, i.e. they sign franchise agreements like normal old days type stuff, but they're also signing like Design Hotels is owned by Marriott, and that's kind of an affiliate agreement, but you're still backdooring into Marriott's Bonvoy system that way, and the ability to get points and use points. So 100%, it's much easier to get the financing if you're affiliated with the brands. And I just think that's forever going to be the case. And, it is what it is. It doesn't mean you can't get it done. It just means that it's easier. And then on the mix, I would love to continue to have, a quarter of our portfolio to be select serve and kind of places that make sense for it to happen and opportunities that present themselves where, Charleston, West Virginia is a great example. We have a Courtyard that's, a RevPAR leader many weeks of that market. And it's just not a market that's probably needs a lifestyle hotel. And so I think there are always going to be markets like that where, a really nice select serve hotel does just fine and serves the needs of the demand of the public there. But, selfishly, as hard as they've been to do, I'm still love the process of figuring out how to, make these hotels, these life-size hotels. And so I think that's what we'll end up doing more of. I mean, the 3 hotels that are currently in our construction pipeline are all lifestyle, 2 Marriott, 1 completely independent. And again, on that independent one, we got financing, but that bank wants us to think about what affiliation we might do, And so there's no requirement there. And of course, we're talking to different folks, but I think one thing that will be true for the next 5 years to 10 years is that you're going to be able to do a project if it's independent and doing well and still call one of the brands and get an affiliation. Once they get to a critical mass of these hotels, they might be more strict about what they let in, but over the next 5 to 10 years, I think they're going to be letting in more because quite honestly, it's easier for the brands to acquire via that way of affiliation than it is to have new hotels built just because it's so difficult to build hotels right now.
So you're also in Philly, which is very close. How far are you from Malvern, Pennsylvania?
Oh, like 15 minutes.
Okay. So I'm a huge fan of Vanguard and John Bogle. And over the years, and like that mix of 75-25, it sounds like that 25 would be like your bond portfolio. And then the 75 is like the more volatile, but higher return, higher risk stock portfolio or equity portfolio.
That's correct. And I think that I look at the 3 selects we have now, 2 of them are doing really well. One's kind of okay. And then, Camptown is now kind of at very good cash flow, and Louisville, I think, is on its way there. And it's just had an interesting journey, I will say, to get to being JDV by Hyatt now. But I think we're one of 2 hotels in downtown Louisville that are Hyatt hotels. So World of Hyatt went from having a Regency to a Regency and now a boutique hotel in, Nulu. So we've already seen a big result. September and October are going to be massively up year over year, which is great to see. And so we're excited to have this whole 60 million World of Hyatt people have a hotel, in Louisville that they didn't have before.
So, okay, this is where I want to kind of start talking about the big brands, like the motherships, if you will. So I've been seeing recently this bifurcation between luxury and lifestyle and everything else over the past, 10 years. But more recently, from a design and construction perspective or a design perspective, which is really, I think, where the independents get to really shine, or the soft brands get to shine. IHG reorganized their design team around Kimpton, Vignette, Regent, so that luxury lifestyle has its own balloon or own playground. Hyatt, which is like super surprising to me, they're like building a team in New York City, right? And they're a Chicago, like tried and true Chicago company, and they're like, okay, well, maybe there's more. I don't know exactly what the motivation is. Maybe it has to do with creativity, like New York as a place of fashion and design,
creative hub. Yeah, it's exactly what. And I think with standard being a big part of that acquisition and the Standard people already being in New York. I think that's a big reason why.
Yeah. And yeah, because you're with JDV, Bunkhouse, although I think Bunkhouse might be staying down in.
They're staying in Austin, yeah.
Yeah, because they're like, that's Austin, right? Marriott's had a luxury and lifestyle footprint in New York City. Hilton, I think, is building one out up there. So there's this interest. They're being treated differently because I think of their outsized contribution and how they also need to be unique. And this is my long way of setting up this question, where, like, if you look at brands like JDV, Bunkhouse, Autograph, Campton, and even like a Waldorf or an Edition,
yeah,
right? They all have different DNA, very different. Like, but how do you think the parent companies are nurturing that individuality versus systematizing it, right? Because they see the brand, the value in it, but oftentimes when big companies, big corporations systematize too much, they can kind of like crush the life out of it too.
Correct. I think it's an amazing question. And I think every one of these companies is asking themselves that. I will give you the answer that I think they should be doing, but I know that they won't each be doing it for each brand. And unfortunately, there's some brands that are so young and there's only 2 of them or 3 of them. Like, they're like babies that you got to let flourish, and they're going to, I think, stifle them before it even gets started. And that's unfortunate, but I liken it to a house, and you're reconstructing a house, and you've bought it and you've demoed it to the studs. You need the brand to do all of the infrastructure, everything that you can't see when you come in at the end of the day and you look at the house. And you need the lifestyle, boutique, creative people to touch all of the things that you will see. And they have such strong pipes, and that's their distribution system. And it is so powerful, and it's more powerful than it's ever been, that is what they need to like lean into. And oh, by the way, your Amex fees, your credit card fees are 2.5% instead of 3.3. Wonderful. Like, all of those things to give to the lifestyle group, that's huge, accretive margin, and it doesn't do anything to the guest experience. When it comes to guest experience, I think that is where they need to sit back and listen to the creatives and say, like, this is what we think matters, and this is what this brand is about. And I know, just because I was on the inside of it for a second, that Bunkhouse and Standard are trying to come in and say, okay, what is Dream? What is Andaz? What is Thompson? And really make sure, before they go forth and put a bunch of more out there, that they define what those brands are and what they're about, and try to keep that brand mission. I think on all of this stuff, it becomes difficult when you're losing money or you're not making, right. Money solves a lot of problems, and you can kind of keep your brand mission. So I think that is the true answer, is if they can focus on the infrastructure and let the creatives kind of, not run amok, but be creative. And some brands may need, you go to a bowling alley and they put the bumpers in the gutters. Like, some may need those gutters, and others may be able to just, go bowl the way they want to bowl. But that's what I think the focus should be. And I think that's why you're seeing Hyatt making a deliberate choice to be like, okay, everyone that's kind of around the lifestyle team is going to sit in New York, and they're not going to be directly in Chicago and kind of influence directly of how we used to do things or how we're supposed to do things. So I think that is allowing for attention. I mean, as you've seen, you work with developers all the time. It's like the tension between the owner of the hotel and the interior designer, right? Like, not everything is just green lit. There's always this value engineering process. And so I think there's a tension there that's good and is ultimately, accretive to the owner and profitable, but they each need to let themselves stay in certain lanes.
And I think those guardrails are really interesting. I had a recent guest, Chris Lenz, on, who has 2, and I think soon to be 3 Hyatt properties in Panama. And he invests so much in the design and the experience. And what I picked up from him is that Hyatt actually trusts him as an owner, that he's going to throw his passion into this. It's going to be great. And I'm sure it's the same thing with you, but there must be, like, on a spectrum, other owners where those guardrails really need to be there, because, if you go to stay at a bunkhouse and it falls flat, like that's also detrimental to the brand. So, and I like that idea of the tension. But have you seen any experience where it's like on a different project where they want this all to work, but then it's like the tension is just too great?
Oh, 100%. And I think a lot of times you see that with owners that haven't done hotels before, right? There's a lot of first-time hotel owners, second time, or people that have done apartments their whole life. And, we're working with a group in Madison right now that has never developed a hotel. And so they brought us in as their joint venture partner. And I think they've been smart to do that because there's certain things that happen when you're doing a hotel that you're just like, oh my gosh, like a model room, like just take that for example. It's like if someone's never done a hotel, they're like, what am I doing? Like the lights and this goes here. And it's like, well, because like we might have bought the wrong chair by a foot or 6 inches, and that could ruin the whole room. And so I think you see this run amok when you have first time folks or inexperienced folks. And even us, I think about pre-opening and model room and that kind of stuff. And you're like, man, that just seems like a lot of extra expense. And, can we do it quicker? And it's like, actually, if you take more time and are more thoughtful on the front end, it is going to save you a ton of money on the long end for sure.
Hey, everybody. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years now. And one of the themes that consistently comes up is sustainability. And I'm just really proud to announce that our sponsor, Berman Falk Hospitality Group, is the first within our hospitality industry to switch to sustainable and recyclable packaging, eliminating the use of styrofoam. Please check out their impact page in the show notes for more info. I want to go back. You mentioned the pipes that the big brands bring. And from a marketing perspective, like my understanding is if you take a typical select service, let's say a Marriott Courtyard, Marriott gets a % of the total revenue of that property, correct?
Yep, that's correct.
Okay. And on some of these independent projects, it's not the way that they're structured is different. So it's not like they're getting a % of the total revenue, but it might be what's coming in from the reservation system. Because you can also market your hotel outside of that ecosystem because you're also like bringing a different experience from even just when you're out prospecting guests or trying to get guests to come to you. How does that work? And that seems like a huge difference and almost revolutionary.
Yeah. And I think again, it's these brands' acknowledgement that they're pivoting. I think I give them a lot of credit for being these large ships that are tough to steer and move agilely, and like they are. And so they're saying, okay, well, I can't charge you just full 5%, 6% franchise fee on all your revenue at your Tribute or at your, whatever soft brand hotel, JDV, Genevieve. So we're going to charge you a revenue stream, a fee on just the revenue that we produce for you. So they're putting their money where their mouth is and saying, look, we believe in our distribution system. We know what we can get. And if we get it for you, then we'll get a fee there. Amazing. It feels like a pay to play. Now there's these certain, IT fees, sales and marketing fees that you have to pay the brands because that's not really a fee. That you're paying that to them and they're spending that money to work for you. And then second thing that I think has been really great for them to acknowledge is a lot of them don't charge your fees on F&B revenue unless it's a World of Hyatt or a Bonvoy person coming into the hotel, and then they'll charge you a small fee on that because they're basically saying, hey, I'm putting this person in your hotel and you got to give me a little fee on that. And that's a great acknowledgement of how hard that industry is, and saying, okay, we know you got to have a restaurant or a bar in your boutique hotel because that's table stakes, but we're not going to fee that up on you because we know how hard it is to make margins in that business. So all of those things I think are acknowledgement of like what type of asset they are affiliating with. And, they're still making good money on them, even though those are the arrangements. And the reason is pretty simple. Marriott's 250 million Bonvoy customers that they have at their digital fingertips to advertise to who want to come stay only in Marriott properties, whether it's an extended stay property because that's where they need to be, or it's, a Ritz Carlton.
Well, let's just, because I have a piece of data I heard on an earnings call a while ago. It may have changed a little bit, but if you looked at a standard select service or even a full service hotel, the percent that the brand would take off of the revenue, like, is there a rule of thumb for what that is?
Yeah, I mean, for standard select service, Marriott's basically at a franchise fee of 5 to 6, and then you've got to call it another 4 of marketing, kind of just brand related fees. So if you looked at a Courtyard, you're probably anywhere between 10 and 11% of top line
Top
that
line.
goes, yeah,
Wow.
that goes to Marriott. Now, again, some of those fees are working for you, i.e., I'm paying Marriott a marketing fee, so therefore I don't have to pay
A sales department or whatever. Yeah.
yeah, I don't have to pay as much in marketing. So it's that's the biggest thing that I have learned from doing an independent hotel that wasn't franchised. I will tell you that. You look at it and say, oh, I'm at 11 here, and now I'm at 4, so I'm saving 7. All right, let's just take that as like, oh, I'm going to go completely independent, and I'm just going to charge whatever fee to the management company, and look at all this money I'm saving. But I need to go spend more on marketing. I'm paying 100 basis points larger in credit card fees. A bunch more of my business is OTA generated, which I have to pay 20% commissions to, as opposed to the negotiating. So you really have to go look at, okay, what am I also saving versus being an independent hotel when I go to the brand, and then compare that to what they are. And then also, well, now it's easier to get a bank loan. It's easier. So that's been the most eye-opening thing for me, and as a business owner, of saying, okay, what's the net cost of being in the brand system, and is it worth it, right? And as opposed to just looking at it nominally.
So let's say you have that 10 to 11% or 9 to 11% of top line revenue for a select serve. What about just a full service Hilton or Marriott in some secondary, tertiary city? Like, what is it? Is it a similar top line percentage?
Probably could be a little less, especially if you have a deal where they're just charging you on revenue that they generate, right? Let's just say the brand says, okay, we'll charge you 6% fees, but it's only on revenue that we generate, and we end up generating 60% of the revenue at your hotel. So net, you'll be in maybe 7 to 8. Now that's on a full service hotel. That's going to be in a much larger number. But yes, I think generally speaking, you will probably be in on a percentage wise less at full serve. Now, knowing that full service margins are lower, obviously, right? That you can make more money, but it's a lower percentage margin.
Okay, so now on the independent or lifestyle, you said it's about 4% of gross.
Well, independent, let's just say you have a brand. I mean, if you just have a management company and you're going completely independent, it's 0.
Oh, 0. Okay, but soft branded.
Yeah, soft branded. Soft branded's kind of like the full serve. It's the same thing. It's 6, 7, 8. If you're doing it with one of the major brands.
Okay, and that's even with the split. Like you that's net after, if you market and you get your own guests to stay there, you're not paying any fee on that, correct?
Right. No, you're talking about in a soft brand situation. Yeah, unless the brand itself is so established that they are charging you that. But like when you look at it from an independent basis, it's again 0.
Independent is 0, but I meant on the soft. The reason this is my long way around getting here is, like, I heard on this earnings call, and again, the numbers may have changed in my aging brain, but if I'm hearing you correct, on that select serve or full serve, you're probably in that, I don't know, 8 to 10% of top line. And then you're probably on the smaller, on the soft branded, you said like 6 to 7.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you are whether you're doing complete full service, like I would say if you're a full service hard brand, like just say lifestyle hard brand, call it 8 to 10. If you are select serve, you're probably 9 to 11. And if you were soft branded, you're probably like 7 to 8. That's probably where it is. Now, again, if I looked at any of these and we're netting it against being independent at quote 0, it would lower the effective rate because you're getting a bunch of things by being in the system that you would not get if you were independent.
But this helps me because for that soft branded property, you're basically 25% less than the full service or the select service, plus or minus. And what was crazy on this Hilton call I was listening to a while ago, they said that the luxury and lifestyle segment accounts for less than 10% of total rooms, but more than 20% of their total fees coming in. So that must has to do with like the rate. There's no rate cap, and they're charging a premium, but that's unbelievable.
Yeah, and I mean that's why you're seeing them lean more and more into this, because these hotels, when they get them right, when owners get them right, the revenues can be tremendous, and you're just seeing the ability to get rate. And obviously, we're in a weird time in the economy, as it seems like some people are struggling, but like the top of the market, which is more geared towards lifestyle hotels, that's who they're geared toward, is seemingly has like no limit, and people are spending and spending and spending. So yeah, it doesn't shock me that that's the stat.
So, and I love also like talking about lighting up, like as you build these properties, you're in it for the long term, right? And if you think about the shifting traveler or person who's spending money on experience or vacation, like what role long term do you think these lifestyle hotels will play in shaping brand loyalty, right? With the younger ones, but also like they get the points, right? But they probably value the experience more. So do you think that this is also a way to get ahead of like a changing demographic shift, so that, yeah, the points are there, but really they want the experience more than the points? That's my thesis.
It's a great thesis. And I think what you're actually going to see is that the loyalty that they earn at these places will actually be redeemed not only for room nights, and I think you're already seeing this. I know you're already seeing this, but for experiences within the markets in which they're traveling. Instead of just taking my 50,000 Bonvoy points and getting 3 nights free, I'm getting 1 night free and a bourbon experience in Louisville with a cool person, or a private dinner, or there's going to be more collaborations locally with these hotels with cool local experiences, and then the customer, i.e., the Bonvoy guest or the World of Hyatt guest, is going to then redeem them for that. And I think that's how they're going to cater to the younger generation of travelers that truly care about the whole experience, which is why, we're gravitating here anyways. Obviously, the older generation doesn't care as much. They're more okay with select serve and the tried and true. But the younger you go, the more kind of choosy they are, and the more they want.
So they can get it might also include an avocado toast with a farm-raised poached egg from their chicken named Sally in the coop.
Exactly. And I think that's what you're gonna see, and what you're already starting to see.
As you're making this shift and building success and runway on the boutique side, the soft branded boutique side, I don't even know what boutique means anymore, but anyway, the soft branded experiential side, is it harder? I know you mentioned earlier that your LPs trust you and they go, but has it opened up like a new segment of investors in these deals? What are you finding there?
Yeah, I would say like jury's still out. I think there are more people. Let me just say it this way. I don't have a long list of our investors that have gone to the Hampton Inn in Tallahassee that we built, but I have a extremely long list of investors that have gone to Camptown and Hotel Genevieve. And so they still need to make money, and all of that is important. But I do think that has been an interesting factoid. We've built all these hotels, and, no one's really gone to them, and they've gotten their check in the mail, and that's been great. But I can't tell you how many have been to Hotel Genevieve in Camptown. And we even have one person that's going to be having their wedding there. And so, it's that kind of stuff that I think is really cool. And I think that's why they wanted to be involved to begin with, or part of the reason they want to be involved. And I think with hotels especially, and, we're a fund that does non-hotel stuff. And I think when you ask the mix before 75-25, I think more important for us is the amount of non-hotel kind of quicker return stuff that we intermix with these lifestyle boutique hotels that we know and are very honest about will take longer to get to where they ultimately are still a great deal. But, it takes a little longer to get there.
Love it. And then I want to kind of pull on that investor thread again. Like, obviously, interest rates are high. There's a lot of uncertainty in the markets. Jobs aren't being created. You read the newspaper, you think the world's going to end tomorrow, every day. But if capital suddenly got tighter, is there a place where you would kind of really put the brakes on a lifestyle project? Or instead of the whole project, where would you cut back severely on a project that's already like ground broken and you're going? Like, how do you pivot in the messy middle if we hit like some kind of liquidity crisis?
If you're in the messy middle during construction, you got to finish. So that's it. But I will say that I think we were in this messy middle over the last 2 years. And while there's still some more uncertainty now than there was 2 years ago, the cost of construction and the interest rates have been a huge barrier. We all know this. And so they're going to come down, and I expect that they'll come down 25 basis points next week. And I don't think Powell will go 50 because I don't think he'll give Trump the satisfaction of that. But I think they'll go down 25. And I think we're going to see a kind of 100 basis points movement over the next 6 months, at which point I think it becomes easier to do a lot of these construction projects. And that's what we've been waiting for over the last years. And so these 3 projects have been in the works, so to speak, for a couple of years, and we've waited, and now we're moving forward. And we also have tax credits on these projects, which is important.
Oh, because they're adaptive reuse, or
2 of them are historic buildings that we're redoing, and one is at the site of a former mill, and it's a remediation project of a former asbestos plant. And so
oh wow,
we get tax credits there. So those are, I think you're going to see that. I think you're going to see people looking for that little cherry on top that it's in an opportunity zone, that type of stuff to kind of break the tie to do the development, and coupled with interest rates coming down a little bit. And ultimately, whatever, I see all the time, like, oh, record-setting construction for hotels. And it's like, but no one's doing, like, people are announcing and doing a lot of things. I think everything is just going to happen slower, and it's just been harder. It's going to be harder and harder to do. But we try to keep not too many projects going at one time, so that we feel like if we've committed to it, that we're going to get it built. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, if you're in an environment that's harder to do anything and you can do the thing within your budget, you're going to probably do better on the other side of it. That's a true 20-year horizon view on development.
Great. I want to talk about that a little bit more as far as the uncertainty and the headwinds. So I have this metaphor, because in my business, of whether it's a new build or renovation, I would say most of what we do over the past 10 years or more is renovation work, because not a lot of new hotel inventories come on for providing custom guest room furniture.
Right.
Since COVID, especially just before COVID, I think we were 10 years into a 7-year real estate cycle, maybe 9 years into a real estate cycle. So like we'd already kind of gone past the cycle as it pertains to hotels. Then COVID happened. And what I was seeing before COVID was renovations were happening. Then COVID happened. It flooded the market with cash. Hotel owners were allowed to deplete their CapEx reserves. And brands got a little less stringent about doing renovations. And each hotel had reduced housekeeping, everything else. But needless to say, since 2020, I think that there's just been a real delay and lag on CapEx being deployed from a renovation perspective. And now you throw in these headwinds. So imagine this like dam or a lake of deferred maintenance and renovation work and repositioning of hotels and other deals. This lake is being held back by a dam of high interest rates, high construction costs, uncertainty of tariffs, trade, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But at some point, that dam has to break. And I know you mentioned like a 25 or 50 basis point chip away. Like that's probably the biggest one. What do you think the biggest contributor to that dam is? And do you see, I know nobody knows anything about telling the future, but do you see that dam breaking in the next year, 2 years, 3 years? Like what's your kind of macro take on it?
Gosh, it's a tough question because politically it's so volatile given, Trump's volatile state of being. And he kind of he flies off the handle and does one thing or the other. But ultimately, I think interest rates have been the biggest reason, right? Like the cost of construction is been high. We kind of know what it is. Some of it is leveled, like materials have leveled, but labor is expensive. But it really because you got to look at how hotels are financed, right? Or real estate is financed. They're financed to do a deal at a certain rate. Okay, well, 10% has been a great return, right? 10% is a good return. Well, as we've looked at interest rates being at 7 to 8, and the cost of construction is a little higher, and so now we can't get 10, we can get 9. It's like all of these banks, if they're doing a deal these days, are basically getting as good, if not better, returns than the equity investors taking all the risk, and the banks obviously get paid back first. And so a turn down 100 basis points to call it 5%. We can do a deal now. It's not the days of like 3.25 bank loans for your house. They may not come back. I mean, that historically is incredibly low. So if we look at 5, which is still historically low, 5.25, you now are able to do all of the asset classes, right? You can build something that is a lower cap rate, 6.5%, 7%, put 5.25 debt on it, and it's positive yield. You can do a hotel at trying to get to 8 or 9 with, so that leverage now means something. People were using bank loans just because they had to do deals because they're developers and they've got money to put to work and they're doing the deals. Now that creates a world where there's real leverage and real meat on the bone for the cash investors and then the general partner that's doing the deal, the developer. And so I think if you get that movement down in rates, if everything else stays equal and there's not some other lever that gets worse, i.e. inflation runs amok and tariffs go crazy and therefore mitigate all that gain you got from rates, I think you're going to be able to see much more development happen. And look, they've kept them where they were because inflation was out of control and they, didn't want all of this development to happen. There's a reason they've kept them there. And I think, despite the critiques that the president gives them, if you look at like what Powell has done and what he's navigated from COVID to now and not letting the U.S. economy fall off the rails, it's actually pretty admirable.
Oh my God, I think it's remarkable. It reminds me of those stories. I was just a little kid, but of Paul Volcker and my parents buying houses with like an 18% interest rate, like in the early 80s. It's how do you make anything pencil? It's like that risk-free rate of return now, that hurdle you were saying, like if you want to show 15, 20% return, you could just, I was just listening to the radio the other day. You could park money in like a 20-year muni, tax-free muni fund, like a direct bond from a town and get like 6% on it, like tax-free, which is really probably like a 8 or 12 or 8 or 10% normal return. And I just want this dam to chip away. I just don't know when it happens.
Yeah, no, and I think I think it could start next week. The next 100 basis points are kind of the most important, in my opinion, to unlocking this new development. And like, as we've said, you don't want to wait too long to go. And so I think we're pretty happy with like the starts on the projects that we're doing now. Because obviously if we are getting debt financing that's floating rate and we're plugging it in at 6.5 today, but it ends up being 5.5, like that's going to be accretive to the project and all the things. So yeah, that's where I think we are, but it's just really, it's a difficult world to be a real estate developer and it's a difficult world to be a hotel developer, but we do it anyways.
But it's also that messy middle, right? And it's like
100%.
the high interest rates are also a barrier to entry, right? Because if you can make it pencil out at this time and open a successful property, like, wow, that's like gravy as rates start coming down too.
100%. 100%. I completely agree.
I like the forward-looking view from you also, as far as like on the luxury lifestyle thing, in the sense that you're in it for the long term. And with that sense and thinking about the evolving demographic and the guest, like that younger guest that wants the experience, do you think that the luxury and lifestyle space will evolve beyond rooms and F&B and that initial experience? Like, do you think they'll become more like cultural hubs for neighborhoods, or do you think it'll pretty much stay primarily guest focused? Like, how do you see that evolving with all of us?
Yeah, no, I think that the best ones will be some of those hubs. And obviously the best restaurants and hotels are the ones that also are frequented by locals. I mean, Camptown, Costa Susana is open on Tuesday nights now, which generally speaking is the locals night. And we're having some of the best Tuesdays we could have imagined. We were nervous to open an extra night because it was the middle of the week. We don't always have high occupancy, but it's now turned into the night where a lot of other restaurants in the Catskills aren't open, and all of the F&B people that have off work are coming to Costa Susana to have dinner. And so I think if you can create those spaces where locals and guests can commingle, it's always to your betterment. And it's just very difficult to do because sometimes you have the locals who are like, I'm not going where the tourists are because it's too crowded and I don't want that. So I think the best ones will do. And then you obviously have these like member clubs / hotels with Soho House that like is this mix of guests and locals and creative thinkers. And, it's just so many of those have kind of not made it profitably monetarily. And so it's hard to know where those go long term. But I do think that it's primarily guest focused. I mean, that's who's coming and paying your bills. The rooms are where your margins are. So the locals aren't, generally speaking, staying in your rooms. But if you're doing a proper lifestyle hotel, you're doing something where locals often, come. And, to use Bunkhouse as an example, like Hotel St. Cecilia is exactly that, right? It's got local members that come and frequent the restaurant and the pool. And then you have guests from all over the world that are coming to Austin and staying there. And it's just like perfect symphony of a hotel that does both. But that tends to be the exception and not the rule. And it's difficult to do.
On the F&B side, I remember being in Shanghai 15 or 20 years ago. There's this amazing, it used to be the Regent. And I was talking to the general manager there. And they had one of the, these crazy Asian buffet, like from everything from sushi to the omelet station to fresh fish and noodles. And it's one of those insane buffet experiences. And I remember he said to me, you know what I would do to make this hotel like the most profitable, or any hotel the most profitable? Get rid of all F&B, right? But this place was amazing. But it did draw, it was like over the top. I don't think that hotel exists anymore. But I've heard from like a standard full service hotel in like a primary or secondary city. I don't know the numbers, but F&B can contribute 10 to 15, 8 to 16% of revenue. I'm just making up a number. But I hear that some independent or some luxury lifestyle and even independence, that F&B component could be, and sometimes they model it to be as high as 50% revenue contribution.
100%. But the issue with that is if it's 50, it's sometimes maybe 5% or 10% of your profits.
Because it's so hard to run. Yeah.
Because it's so hard to run. And so I think finding the right mix of that is an incredibly important component that I didn't appreciate. And that's when I said to Louisville, we had too many F&B outlets, right? If it's because you're just like, all of my people on a given night, I might do 15,000 in F&B revenue, but I'm doing it across 4 outlets. And instead of, they all would have come to my rooftop, and that's a way easier thing to manage. And so I think understanding how staffing an F&B model then hits your margins, I think is more important than how much revenue you're going to do. Because once you do the thing, there is a fixed cost to run the thing. And you're doing that part to make money, hopefully, but more importantly, you're doing it as an amenity, a real important thing to your guests. So understanding what it costs to keep it running well is the more important analysis before you go in and do your hotel than to think, okay, can I make $5 million of revenue from it or $3 million in revenue from it?
I love it. So this conversation has been really illuminating for me, and I'm hopefully for a lot of my listeners as well. Is there any question about this space or your path that you wish I would have asked?
Yeah, no, I think you've done a good job going through it. I think it's been interesting to have this conversation with you, like as I was like wide-eyed and bushy-tailed 4 years ago or 3 years ago, like we're going to open these things. And they're all going to like do 100% the first week and everybody's going to love them. And so, and then now and saying, gosh, it didn't really go that way, but we do have a lot of people that love them. We have a Michelin key in Louisville and Hotel Genevieve. We have a chef that's, been nominated twice for a James Beard in Camptown. And so there's been all of these successes, and we're on a long road of getting to where we're going to go. And I think it's just always reminding yourself that, it's not a short-term business. This is a long-term business. And if you're saying that to investors and you're saying it to banks, then you better practice it and how you operate and how you look at your asset.
Cool. I actually have a question that I did think about, where you signed on with Bunkhouse before the Hyatt acquisition, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And then now Hyatt acquired, you have Bunkhouse, you have JDV.
Yeah.
And it's always hard to kind of manage an acquisition like that and merge cultures, and you've seen it before and after. As far as it goes with Hyatt, like, what do you appreciate the most about Hyatt as compared to your experience with other brands that you might have?
Well, our relationship is very personal, and I think Hyatt, if you're looking at the four brands, you've got IHG in America, Core's obviously, Marriott, Hilton. I think Hyatt is really about like this personal touch and really understanding. And they've always been smaller, the small brother or the younger brother in the room. And so whether you're having polite conversations or hard conversations or whatever they may be, they always pick up the phone and they always answer and they always, try to get it done. And look, I'm not saying Marriott and Hilton don't do that. And so but in this process, where I was in this unique position of having done a bunch of Hyatts, been a developer of the year for Hyatt, and then having not chosen them to do the Louisville deal and done it with Bunkhouse, and then all of a sudden end up back with Hyatt. They could have treated that situation very differently and said, you chose not to do it with us, but they don't. They are about people and they're open armed. And so, we have navigated that transition, and I think the hotel's in a much better spot now than it's ever been. And we're excited about it.
Awesome. I've enjoyed this conversation so much. Like I said,
thank you.
I know all of our listeners have. If people want to learn more about you or your projects or company, what's a good way for them to get in touch?
www.mountainshoreproperties.com is the website. They can email me there or hit me up on LinkedIn, Stephen Wendell. And yeah, we'd love to talk to you. And, just talking to some folks that reached out to me randomly on LinkedIn yesterday that are doing similar kind of Camptown-y hotels. And, he said, I'm doing a hotel in Virginia in Waynesboro, and I want to pick your brain about Camptown. And we had a 30-minute conversation about that. So I'm always happy to chat with folks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to all of our listeners. Hopefully, if you have a chance, go back and listen to our first one and kind of see how I've changed and how Stephen's changed. And I think that would be cool. I think I want to go do that again once this published and look and just see how it goes. But if this has changed your thinking on hospitality or the built environment, please pass it along. We grow mostly by word of mouth, and we love your feedback. So don't forget to like, subscribe, leave comments, and all that good stuff. Thank you all very much, and we'll catch you next time.